Yeah.
Ready and go.
Do another one.
Quiet on set!
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of 12 Volt Buzz. I am Mike, back on the mic, and been about a couple of weeks since we've had a chance to come on, but it's been busy. Today's going to be a good day. We're actually going to start probably a 3 or 4 part saga because the tale cannot be told in one day. So you've heard the name from probably every episode, so we're actually going to bring out one of the owners. He's kind of the one that's been taking Vernon Signature Audio into the next generation. So, been doing it for a long time. I've said it before. I think people have said it, have heard me say it. Probably the only installer I've ever met that can back up what he says. All the way from Dodge City, Kansas, Mr. Leon Winchester.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. It gets busy.
Sure.
I don't think anybody's more busy than you around here.
The heck?
Oh, this was from a previous episode. I think this was from Luscious's episode. They got excited and it overspewed. But
Not once, but twice?
yeah. His beer saw him, and then mine saw him, and it was there. It was. But coming into this, the reason this is probably going to be longer than the average, what we do, is because you've been doing this a long time, and you've gone from grunt installer to manager to now full owner. So we'll be able to take that journey as a week comes. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. So.
Oh, man. So, God, I started this journey when I think I was 20, something like that, maybe 21. I was very young in Dodge City, Kansas. I only had one stereo shop. I don't know if we're going to take it back that far, I guess. So this is early 2000s. And yeah, I went to the only stereo shop in town. Went in, met the owner, asked for a job. They said, go to the community college, register yourself for classes, AC/DC electrical, show up tomorrow for work, and if you're a minute late, just don't show up at all. Wild, right?
That is crazy because, I mean, that sounds like the guy was pretty serious. I know you call him the old man. Was that?
It was his wife.
Okay, his wife. Because here, and I mean, it might have been the same thing. You probably just got thrown into it when you got here, right? You go around looking at somebody hires you. Usually no requirements other than, can you install this? Let me see it. So I didn't know that you actually had to go and take courses and do AC/DC. Do you, was it something you always wanted to do? What made you go in and be like, I'm going to try this?
So in high school, they gave us military came and they gave you a questionnaire and you fill it out, what you want to do. Found this later after high school, and turns out the only two things in my life I ever wanted to be was a computer programmer or a car stereo installer. Set the bar low, I guess.
It's kind of weird because even, me doing this, never thought about it, but as soon as I did it, it was just like, man, this is cool. And it's hard to walk away from it, Do you remember your first install by any chance? Do you remember the car, what it was?
Yeah, well, so I didn't get to install, right? I was basically tool shagger, right? We know it as a shop bitch.
Yep.
And I had to go and get the guy tools. He said, when you can bring me the tool before I need the tool, we'll let you work on a car. Of course, I want to say that I think that it took me, I was fast paced through the whole process, right? Because I think it took me 8 months before me and that Phil, we couldn't get along. We butted heads.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 2 stores, and I remember him threatening me like, one day, Leon, I'm just not going to be here. It's going to be all on you. And I'm going to be in Garden City. And I'm like, damn. Okay, so, we would do installs, and kind of an idea is I've had some of our guys, you know, like, hey, can I take a new remote start and put it in my car? No, that wasn't the expectations. Now that's what I did, right? But I got my ass chewed out for taking a brand new piece of product out of off the shelf, right, and installing it in my car, where I was assigned to go to the trailer next door, open it up, grab a brain, source all of the parts to that brain, and install it in my car. That would have been more impressive.
Yeah. You know, I'm in agreement with you because you already know I hate if I open the box and it's used. Nope, don't want to put it in because it's probably not going to work. There's a reason it's open box. Um, what would you say? Like things are different, right? And I look at it like if we let's just take Christian when Christian came in. You know, he came, he talked to you. He's got his degree in computer engineering or computer science, whatever it is. Um, you gave him a shot. He's come on board. And he's doing things in early times, and kind of like you said, it seemed like there was especially for where you're at, because here you just kind of get thrown in it. But you seems like you actually had quite a bit of structure early on. If he was like, you're not touching anything until you know what this tool is, you know what that tool is. Um, what do you kind of keep here that you've learned from that early aspect of your install?
I mean, now it's the fact that you got to know all your paperwork before we want to let you touch a car, especially if you're green and you've never done it before, right? So that's the first thing. And then just like me, with him, I was just go get tools. That's funny. He used to say, do what you're doing with this eye and watch what I'm doing with this eye, right? And it's just, I'm young, I'm in my 20s,
Yeah.
and I'm looking around at him like, damn, this makes like no sense. What are you asking me, man? Like, I don't understand. It took everything that man taught me didn't develop and actually make sense until like a decade later or longer.
Yeah.
It was bad. Either I'm a slow bloomer or I just didn't understand what he was trying to say.
Like most 20-year-olds, I mean, you got this eye and this eye. We got that third eye. A lot of times that one's doing most of the thinking, so it's real easy not to like to really pay attention to what's going on. Do you remember the first time you got to like pull a car in and just be like ground up? You got to do the install and not having to.
No, I don't. I remember my first remote start, which was on my 94 Chevy Cavalier that I unsuccessfully got put in. Everything was fine because at that point I knew call direct text, get a, what is that, fax back,
Yep.
right? And analog car. So every wire needs to be hooked up almost, right? And so I get everything hooked up. I can get the doors to lock, unlock. I can get the pop trunk to pop. I can't get it to remote start. And so that's when I got my ass chewed, right? Because I called and I'm like, hey, I did it, thinking I was going to be proud of. And no, what? You did what? No. And he didn't tell me. I had to figure, there was no tech support, you could call it that. It was just to get a fax back. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to tell you exactly, like, not like today.
Yeah.
So after reading the book over and over and over, like the manual, right? And I realized that I didn't ground my neutral safety switch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go. Sitting there, it should start. You
Yeah,
know?
it should start. And it didn't want to do nothing, man. So,
Damn directed remote starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I've done that too. I think anybody starting out, and even if you're reading the directions, you see neutral safety switch. And I think the first time I did one, it's like, well, this isn't a standard. So what the hell do I need the neutral safety switch for? But the fax back, yeah, it's kind of crazy. You pick up the phone now and somebody answers. Back then, yeah, I had to wait 2 days for that fax back. And they were like, "Did you ground the neutral safety switch? The fuck is that?" You know, black with a white stripe wire, right? If anybody's doing that. So as long as you've done this, what we're going on like 24 years now, 20,
yeah, like 24.
24. Um, other than of course everything going digital, what do you think has been the biggest change that you remember, like, or you didn't expect things would be like? Did you think things would come this far in the industry?
No, no. Actually, if it wasn't, remember it was, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago? I was like, man, if this is all it is, I didn't even want to do it no more. Like, it
Yeah,
was
you
no
kinda-
more trunk slams. Fuck this. This is boring.
Yeah, and it does. And I think with I mean, at least for us, you went and you found MSC America, Audiotech Fisher, and it's amazing what can be done with that technology. And you've gotten it down good. I actually think I saw the vehicle that we're working on now, the 2025 HD. I think I saw a message because we can see all the messages that come through, and it said from the owner of the vehicle was like, it says you got to be able to know how to tune this. I think you're that guy. I saw that and I kind of like laughed when I saw that because I was like, was he joking with you or did he like just do some research and was like,
I don't know what he saw. I saw that last night when he sent that, and we responded. But yeah, so I don't know what he saw on the forum or what he looked up. But before he went home, I gave him the website, told him to look up the gear and do a little homework on that. But let's go back before we start talking
no,
about
yeah, yeah,
today.
definitely.
So I gotta say that when I was in this first starting, this is the very development stages where we had, like, I came into it a little late. I know you were probably in it before me, right? Or like from the 90s. I came in it, I say late, but it was really it was the beginning of an era that took audio to the next level, right? So when I started, let me think here. We were a JL dealer, and the W7 had just come out,
Mm-hmm.
and the L7 was rivaling the W7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were trying to compare it as an SPL woofer, not an SQ woofer. And then when I got into it, I started to see things like the Warhorse. No, that was after. I'm sorry. We saw the 9500 MTX. Like
Mm-hmm.
super woofers came out. They had the 55, 75, 85, and the
95s,
95.
yep.
They had those black amplifiers with the chrome MTX on the top with the red LED.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the series they were. But they had a name. They had an 800.1 and I think like a 1500.1,
Mm-hmm.
and those things were animal, right?
They're
And
power
so
hungry. I remember that.
yeah, they were MOSFET in, MOSFET out. We had just signed on with MyTech because the guy that I was dealing with had an issue with JL because he had two stores, and they would give him JL in Dodge, but he couldn't have it in Garden because there was
Oh,
another shop at the time that was they wanted it and they were more friends with the reps. So things a little different back then than now, but we were in that area where it was just starting to get good. Like woofers were coming out, and yeah, the 9500, you could stick it in the wall, plug it in the wall, and
oh,
it wouldn't fry.
yeah. The same was the. Do you remember? Well, you actually have one that you need to recone. That Orion HCCA sub. That huge. I remember for a while that had the record for outlet plug, and it's kind of stupid that it's out there, but there's you can look it up. And there's I think they tested a Serwin Vega, Orion HCCA, a Stroker. The Stroker is what they tested, and plugged it in. It took over a minute for that HCCA just to freaking freeze. Everything else was like almost instant.
Yeah, it
Um,
was quick.
but you know what? Now that you say that, yeah, that 2000 era, because I came in '98 and it was still Punch 45 was big and the ProMOS series, and then all of a sudden JL hit with they had always had their subwoofers, right? But they hit with the W7, and then they hit with their Slash series amps, and it was like, whoa. The fact that it doesn't matter if I'm doing 4 ohm or 2 ohm, I've got the same, right? That rail system just switched. It was crazy. Other than, because I already know right now, this is, with Audio Tech Fisher equipment. What was your favorite product when you started, like back in the day?
Clarion and MTX, or
Clarion MTX.
Audio Tech, or not Audio Tech. God damn it, MyTech Corporation,
So
right?
anything,
It was the MyTech. So those were the products that I liked. So, and again, this is kind of moving forward because you were talking about the 45, Punch 45. Like I owned that product when I was in my teens, when I lived in Albuquerque. I remember going to like Ultimate Electronics and walking in there, and they had like Soundstream mules,
oh
and
yeah,
that was what they were showing me. And I couldn't afford the Soundstream mules, so I had to go one level underneath, right?
the SPL.
And I can still remember to this day the guy's name was Theo. And that dude was the guy at Ultimate Electronics installing my shit in my Geo Tracker. And I remember him, they had a cool wood room that was separate. I remember going in the back and he took me back there and he's like, "Hey, I built you a box and it didn't sound right. Found out these subs like a little bit more space and I wanted it behind the back seat, you
Mm-hmm.
know?" So Geo Tracker, it had that little compartment in the
Yeah,
back, right?
dude, those were
And
popular back in the day.
yeah, and so, they had one on the showroom floor with an acrylic box with four subs in it, and they backseat delete, and so that was kind of the thing that got my ball rolling, right? And then, so ultimate, that guy Theo, right? Like I said, I could still remember. I don't know why it's so vivid, but I remember him showing me his truck, and God, this is late 90s, right? It's got to be mid late 90s. And he had a topper on it. He had two tens, fourth order band pat, like fourth order, yeah, fourth order in the bed. Topper had the opening going into the cab, right? And he was so proud of his two subs. And I'm
Yeah.
just a kid, not really understanding what he's doing at the time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I remember that experience of him showing me all that stuff. Can't remember anything else, but I remember that guy.
That excitement and all that stuff that he had for it. And
Yeah,
it's kind
that
of the same way, right? Like when you do something really good and you know it sounds good, you can't wait to get that customer in. But look what I've done, Captain Boss. And it's crazy because I like my tech was always big, never really big here. And it's kind of weird because, like here, Fosgate was huge, Phoenix Gold was huge, PPI was huge, of course, JL was big, and MTX was always one of those brands. And we would see it in the magazines, of course, because we didn't have internet and any of that crap like there is now. But yeah, I remember the first time I saw a jackhammer and they were using like a crane loading it, and what the hell?
first 350-pound woofer.
Yeah, crazy. Never got to hear one, just seen pictures of it, but. So MTX was like, and I remember it's funny that you said whenever you said Soundstream in the Mule, because we had a car here, the Purple People Eater is what they called it, the Buick Regal, and he had 8 SPL mules in there on all Phoenix Gold amps, MS series and MPS series, all sealed, right? We didn't really. Did you when you started? Were y'all doing a lot of porta boxes?
I was doing ported. So when I started, I was told, get the boom out of your head. That doesn't make money or pay the bills. And so I had to learn shit that you don't even learn in car audio, right? I had to learn how to diagnose through, read Mitchell manuals. There were books. He had all of them a subscription, right? So you'd go in the back room, you'd find the year, domestic, import, and then you'd be like component locator, wiring diagrams, right? And then so I had to learn how to do that stuff. And then, of course, the test light was my favorite tool. People will talk a lot of shit about it today. I love the test light. There was nothing better than a test light. Even to this day, I love a test light. And so, I never blew anything up. I never had any of the horror stories with it. But yeah, the growing up for me and learning how to do things right was repairing cassette mechanisms,
Oh shit!
illuminate, ultrafluorescent illumination. I think Ford in the mid 90s, when you had to put the keys in to pull the radio out, there was a particular year the display was green and it would go out, and there was the Pioneer model, and you'd have to change out the whole sink in the back to get the thing to come on. And man, it was expensive, but it made money. And so we did cruise controls, like vacuum cruises is what I started on.
Oh dang!
And then we graduated into electronic cruises.
Did you ever
So
have to do the pedal pull?
yeah, we did the pedal pull. That was because there was no drive-by-wire yet, like cruise controls. So we were using the 1223s with the universal handle, and you would drill a hole through the floor and linkage to the fucking pedal and get that shit right. Like sometimes, oh my God.
And hope that the pedal stayed. Yeah, like it was. I remember that. Like, it was horrible. Like, I mean, now it's easy, right? You plug into the freaking accelerator and mount your switch, and you're good. But back in the day, yeah, you did that link cable, ran it through the firewall, and attached it to the pedal. And the pedal's plastic, right? So you got to think, man, I can't screw it up, because what happens to plastic when you keep drilling holes, right? And then you'd be on the road testing it, and you'd see that pedal pull, and he would always do this number here, and it was never like perfect, right? But it would work until they were towing something.
So I remember we developed the first drive-by-wire. We didn't develop it, right? So the cruise control was on the Chevy Express vans. We found that out because we were able to pull diagrams. At this point now, we could get a CD or something from what is it, Mitchell 1, right? And so what we discovered was the cruise control was already on the Express. All we needed to do was trigger the damn cruise, turn it on. So we spent, some time, pulled the manuals, and, you pull the knee bolster, and you have these plugs right there, and there's populated wires on the back, but they're not over here. So you locate your wires, and you pin those wires, And then we would use an open circuit handle at that time to trigger the factory cruise, and we charged like a cruise. Nobody knew. Like this was, if you knew about it, you knew about it, and if you didn't, then you couldn't do it. But that old man that taught me how to do stuff, man, like that dude he's a genius, right? And
It sounds like he's like, you talk about gangster old school, but he's what now, in the 70s?
73, and he's still installing.
So,
What are you saying?
So Phil Cummins is the man's name. He owns Custom Auto Radio out of Dodge City, Kansas, and Garden City, Kansas. And like I said, he's 73, and something that's funny. All right, so this is a story, right? The old man, I'm a 20-year-old kid. He's obviously at this point in time probably in his late 40s, early 50s, right? And I remember that he would run around me going, "Look, Leon, this old man's running circles around you." And I would look at him and be like, "But you know what you're doing." And so the other thing was like common sense. Everything was common sense. And it wasn't until later I found out it was common sense to him, not to me. But yeah, the installation back then it wasn't harder. It's just we used the tools. It wasn't so spoiled as now. Yeah. And when we did boxes, so he was doing fourth orders with eights at that time. And so through MECP, I knew what a sealed and ported box was. And then, that's kind of where I got all my experience building boxes on the ground. You put 2x4s on the ground, you lay your sheet, you measure it out, skill saw that bitch with no guide. Yeah. Because I wasn't smart enough to strap a 2x4 to get a guide. So I'm just doing it on the ground.
Sanding the edges afterwards.
Yeah, jigsawing. The wrapping was the pizza cut where you fold over in your pizza and the whole thing. So
you can barely see the wood. That's a good
yeah. Spray paint over it so you didn't see it. We weren't
custom back then, though.
Screwing boxes together. I didn't have a staple gun. I had to pre-drill screw them together.
But your boxes were solid, though. When you think about it now, shit.
And I do it in a day by myself.
Yeah, when you're younger, that freaking testosterone is just all over the place.
What was it you were telling us that how many installs he's still doing to this day?
Oh shit! Right now, so you can say whatever. So last we spoke. In Kansas, winter season starts probably late September, early November, maybe November. I think he said he was like at 53 remote starts.
Damn.
20 cent by himself, 53. I mean, he could probably rival the boys in Alaska.
Right. It gets cold in Kansas. If you haven't been there in the winter, it does get cold. So when I hear you talk about, Mr. Cummins, it's funny because you're talking about common sense, and we're talking about, is there any part of that relationship that reminds you of you and Christian?
Oh, shit. Not just Christian, but a lot.
A lot, right?
Like everybody, right? It's just, I think it's just age and maturity. Like I think we had a meeting, right? And I'm like, intelligence isn't something you have. It's maturity. You acquire maturity, not intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So
you get that patience level, and you get that like, God dang it. And like you said, common sense to you, it wasn't common sense back then. To him, it wasn't. Today, now you're in that role where you're like, how many times will you just fucking common sense? Clearly not, because there goes Steve with that boomerang.
It does make a lot more. It sets the perspective, right? And I see it, and I look at people, and in the back of my head, I'm just like, so this is what it must have been like when he was trying to train me to be what what I'm trying to get out of them now. And so, but he didn't. Unless I was buried under in quicksand, right, where I totally just screwed up a whole job, he wouldn't bail me out. Never.
Yeah.
Never bail me out. I remember like, fuck, man, couldn't just tell me it's not that hard. And he'd make me figure out what the hell was wrong with it. And so that anxiety, I'm surprised I ain't had a heart attack yet. But
you never know. Sometimes people have mild ones, just don't really have one.
The anxiety, is insane. But, I remember more of my fuck ups than I do my installs, right? I remember a lot of the good ones, like some of the good ones, I finally got to build my own car the way I wanted to build it at the time, and that's volcanoes and stuff. And during this time, MTX had just come out with their high-end component set, $650 set of components. There was no three-ways back then. And I had a 2002 Chevy Envoy, or 03 Chevy Envoy. And so I had bought all my stuff, and this is the era, right? We had motorized screen. Double din
Oh, yeah.
didn't exist,
Yeah.
and I didn't like motorized. I thought motorized was dumb as shit. Like,
I didn't like it either.
fuck that.
You know why I didn't like it?
want
It froze like that
Yeah.
every freaking time. And it went bad. It never went bad this way. It went bad like that.
It was so.
Yeah, it would
So-
go bad like there.
Did you install headrest monitors back then?
Oh shit!
All right.
All right. So you know Wicked One, right? He'd order those little bitty raw monitors. I'm sure he did it too. The visor,
Yeah.
we're pulling the mirror out and sitting there and trying to stuff padding in it so it would, yeah, and then cutting the headrest. And
So
you only had one chance.
yeah, you only had one. You couldn't
one cut.
fuck that up.
Yeah.
So I would take my monitor because I wanted a screen, and so I found the biggest screen that we had in the shop was like 5 something, maybe 6 inches, pushing it. And I took in my Envoy, I took my double din radio out, and I basically hot glued that motherfucker in place with a bezel. Like I cut some ABS.
Yeah.
Remember back then I had no router stations, no fab skills. Like this was all very scary with
A jigsaw.
a janky table saw that was on unleveled ground with cardboard shoved on there under there and like a jigsaw and whatever tools that we had, like to be able to try to imagine making an ABS ring with no knowledge so that that screen would fit in the ABS, and the ABS I could take my soldering iron and solder it with little notches to the front bezel and then hot glue it to reinforce it, and that just had to hold my screen. And then back then the screen had to go to a DVD player. So it came out and it had your video cables, right? And I had a DVD player and I had pulled, I think, like something underneath. I had to relocate my climate controls because it was underneath. I took those out and I stuck my DVD player down there.
That's a good
And
spot.
I had to, and of course the DVD player, I had to find one that had RC, like speaker level out, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Clarion had one. So that's what I was using to play my movies. And then at this time was the very first stages. I think it was called a DVH 940. It was the first processor that we had.
Okay.
First one in existence that I knew about from way back then. I'm sure I was somebody, we didn't do Alpine, we did Clarion. That was it. So
I love
I'm sure
Clarion.
somebody had something, but it was a DVH 940 and I ran all my stuff to it. And I didn't know about Active then. I didn't know about a lot of shit back then, right? I was just taught how to install. And so I ran the passive crossovers like this big, and
Oh,
I
shit,
had
yeah.
everything just mounted in its own spot. And like the box that I had built, it had 410s. They were sealed, so I basically had learned. I'd watched some select product VCR, VHS tapes.
I was going to ask you, like, because they had like basic installation in the box building. There were videos you could buy. But it'd be like, whoa, that's good fucking training.
So
yeah.
I learned from those VHS tapes, and then what tied it together was I'd gone to Santa Fe Distributing in Lenexa, and Fishman Dave Rivera was there, and he had done a class, and that's where I learned to use Bondo. So I learned the trick to make my lip to recess my woofers by just cutting a strip of plastic, yay long. You bend it around the woofer so you find where it meets, cut it off, and you super glued it. Then you super glued it onto your ring, and then you would body fill all the way up to it, and then you'd drop your woofer, and then you'd be you needed a way to get to it because there was, no way to pull it out. So at this time I built my sides, my back, and my floor, right? And I cut my rings again, jigsaw rings, no routers in this time. And I set them where I needed them. And then I, built my amp rack, and I broke out my fleece and my staple gun and did all that. One layer of fiberglass resin. I didn't know about, the layers of the kitty and the nylon stuff back then. So I just made sure that it went all the way through, and then come on Bondo. Like I remember gallons of Bondo, like mixing it in the can. Hardcore, and then just dumping that shit out because I had a gap to fill that it took like 3 or 4 cans to fill it. Just you're not supposed to do it that way, just by the way. And then I thought I wanted to paint my shit on top of that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to wrap it. So the whole box is fiberglass front and back, and the amps mounted on the back, and I had a tray in the front. I've got a picture somewhere, 410s. I had built this weird looking little thing with a raw monitor that held my Xbox 360, and then where I could put my controllers, right? And so all of this is in the back of that vehicle with a spare battery. You had to pick the box, it ate it like Pac-Man, man. You see the cup, you just lay it on top. So the battery was sitting in a hollow spot in the box, right? And so I did the whole install after hours, started at 5 at night, and I finished that shit at 3 in the morning.
Man, you
It
were
was
using
live.
a heat gun on that resin.
No. So, no, the box took 7 or
Okay.
8 months to finish. No, I wanted to paint it. So I remember with Dominic's mom taking that shit home, and we were sanding on that motherfucker.
Damn, Jim.
Jen got some action on that box. We were sanding it.
Shout out to you, Jim.
I had a guy that we had a Ford dealership down the road, and we were good friends with the guy running the paint department back then. And so I would take it by to him, and he would look it over, and he'd be like, touch it up here. And so I kept taking it, and finally we got on that last layer of sandpaper. And, at this time, again, I'm in my 20s. I don't have no coaching. I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have none of the stuff we had today. I knew how to prime my box because I had a 94 Cavalier, and I got the bright idea to put a body kit on the Cavalier. If you've ever heard of Andy's Sports and Racings, they exist today. They made a wide mouth body kit for this Cavalier, had no mounting tabs. It's like they pulled it out of the fiberglass box and sent it. There's nothing to attach it, right? So
nothing a few self-tappers can.
So I had pulled my shop into the shop in Dodge and sanded my car all the way down to the metal in that shop, and I primed that car in the shop, and so that's how I knew how to prime my box. And we didn't have the poly primer that we use now back then. Yeah. So, and dude, I didn't know. Nobody fucking supervised me. We're in a 2-bay garage, and the car fits. It eats up both bays sideways the way I had it, so I could walk around the stupid thing. And I primered in there. I got my ass chewed again. Because this was on a Friday. They came back on a Monday.
Overspray.
The whole shop was coated with fucking something on it. Yeah. I got my ass chewed. So it was like, this is where he's like, don't you have common sense? Like, come on, boy, what the fuck are you doing? And I didn't know no better. This is how I gained my experience throughout the industry. And I mean, doing dumb shit. I remember the bad stuff. So we did dealership work, remote start season in Kansas. We already know. Brand new car from the Toyota dealership. It was either a Tundra or Tacoma. No, it was a Sequoia. I'm sorry. Got to do the rear hatch circuit, right? 5-wire. Well, obviously I hooked my fucking my 87 and A and 30 backwards because I tried to pop the trunk and smoke rolled out the BCM. And they're waiting on this bitch, and it's a brand new truck,
switch side motorcycle,
and I'm just like, what am I going to do, right? So again, not wanting to call for help, and this is a brand new car. At that time, I figured BCMs were like the price of a car, so I didn't know no better. So I had enough sense to be dangerous. I took the BCM apart. This is before everything it was like the beginning stages of low current and shit, but I watched the foil trace in there that was burned, and I jumped it with a wire, and everything came back to life, and I'm like, okay, cool. Program the remote start, done, set it off, never saw the car again.
Yeah, no, I've had to repair burnt trace before, and it's funny you say that because I've always said it seems like in the older days, if we want to call it that, right? And I always call it the heyday of car audio. I think late 70s and 80s, but I think in the 90s is when everything started peaking. It was like a sink or swim. Like he was just like, here I am, and I'm just nobody's paying attention. You're just looking around and let me just fix this and no harm, no foul. But yeah, and So fiberglass was, you were in that phase when fiberglass was coming in, and
So, all right. So we learned how to. So this is how we flush mounted amps in the floor, right? Everybody knew you take the spare tire, you flip it upside down, use the inside of the tire opening, right? So you can mount your amp to it. Typically, it's always a few inches lower than the floor of the car. And so we had a bunch of pegboard back then.
Ooh.
It's like I never got taught about MDF until later. So we get a bunch of pegboard, and we take the original tire cover, throw it like the outline of what's in the trunk, right? And we would throw that on top of the pegboard, trace it out, jigsaw that, and then I remember we had the white pieces of paper you put in the floorboards after a detail job, right? Mm-hmm. You would fold that paper up to the dimensions of the amplifier, and you would take the black Gorilla Snot, and you would lay that paper on the amplifier with the folds down, so it put pressure, and you put the snot on top, and you laid your board on top, so that when you lifted the board, paper was stuck where you needed to. There's holes in the pegboard.
yeah,
But, this is the steps we took to make, and then there was usually either it was neither not big enough, which was what you wanted, so that you could, make it slide right over because you wanted to pressure over it, or it was too big. And then you had to leave your carpet big so that you could fill it.
It would fill the gap. No, and it's funny that you say that because we weren't using pegboard, but we would have masonite here, and it's so comical to think now, like whenever you order the little pieces of cardboard, right, and you tape them together and get your shape, and back then we'd be like, cut a little bit off here, nope, I'm gonna take it back out, cut a little bit off here, nope, cut a little bit off here, and then you put it in, like, cut you freaking much off. Old carpet wraparound trick. There you go. Fill the gap. But, now you're like, why wouldn't we just...
And then screws from the front to mount it, right? Because I finally got a little smarter and would cut my strips of wood that would fit around the amplifier to be able to screw it to the board and then pull it off to get a better cut. But
you just take it and then transfer it to your wood and be like, this is where it's going to go to.
I wasn't taught to fabricate. I wasn't in the era. He didn't hire me to build badass cars. It's what I thought I was going to be doing when I got hired, and then it's like, oh man, harnesses. They called them idiot plugs. Any idiot can fucking wire colors to color. Any idiot can do that. A real installer can identify the colors on the car and just hardwire it to it.
Yeah.
So that taught me how to memorize colors in GM, Toyotas, Fords, Chryslers, pin locations, that made me the most efficient I ever had been in my entire life because I didn't need a schematic.
Yeah.
At some point in time, I knew exactly what wires went where on that vehicle because they were memorized. They were embedded into my brain.
Especially GM, Fords, and Chryslers, right? Like you already know like the wire colors.
You knew there was going to be two oranges, and one of them belonged to the front left, and one belonged to the right rear.
Yep.
And then the white right positive on the right hand side of the front door on a Ford. Yeah. You always had on Chrysler. We had
you got your green, yellow, your green, violet, and you got a bunch of greens.
Colors.
Yeah, your grays. Yeah. Gray, light green, and gray, yellow. And you memorize those. And it's funny you said that because I remember when I started installing too, I had no idea harnesses existed. What? Because the only thing I'd really done at that time was my car. But it was a Chevy Corsica, and
we had one of those. It's a good car.
Yeah, orange was power, and yellow was accessory, and it took a lot of blown fuses to figure that out, or the radio staying on. I think that's what it was the first time. I was like, I'm just going to hook yellow. You know what I mean? And when the car wouldn't shut off, like the radio wouldn't shut off, so I have to power it. And then I was like, it can't be right.
I remember my first installation, Mike. I was about 15 years old, and I was in middle school, probably 14 in middle school, 8th grade, and my neighbor, right, was a she, had a crush on my neighbor, right, but she wouldn't give me the time of day. Of course, I grew up in Albuquerque, so gangs were thick real at this time.
Yeah.
She didn't want no kid that wasn't no cholo, right? So her cousin came to live with them, and me and him, we hit it off pretty good, right? We were good buddies for a long time. And I remember one day, he comes over knocks on the door, and he comes out, and baggy pants, real big baggy pants back then. He reaches deep in his pants and he pulls out a stereo, Rampage,
Oh,
and he's
wow.
like,
Yeah.
"I just took this from a car down the street. Do you want to put it in your car?" And I said, "Sure." So we're sitting I had a little Nissan Pulsar, and so no stereo. I didn't know wire to wire, but I was like, I just matched color to color, and fucking smoked that radio on the second wire, right?
But you sold me a bad radio.
I remember we both looked at each other, and he's like, "I'll just steal you another one tomorrow."
Yeah.
That was, I think that was kind of like my first journeys of car audio, right?
No, and now you know why they made pull-out stereos, right? Because it was like there was a time, radios were getting stolen, so they made the pull-out, right? Hit a button. And it's funny to think, it's so comical now because it was like, I remember walking in the mall and seeing people walking around carrying their freaking radio with them, like they're cool and thinking, oh, that'd be badass. And I remember, I probably didn't really install it. I helped, but in high school I had a friend named Malcolm, and his dad was a DJ, and everybody remembers the Vanilla Ice song, right? Ice Ice Baby. And in that song where he says, now that the whatever's pumping with the bass kicked in and the Vegas are bumping, and he's talking about Serwin Vegas subwoofers, right? The Vegas are bumping, and his dad being a DJ had Serwin Vegas, so he had went and got a realistic EQ booster from Radio Shack. It was no different than a radio power, right? So it got 8 watts of power, but you got some graphs you move. And we took those Serwin Vegas and threw them in the trunk of the car and hooked them up to the EQ booster, and all we had was just high pass signal going to it. But damn it, we thought we were so cool rolling it through the streets of Shallow Water. Like, I don't even think you could hear it outside the car. Honestly, I think if you got I think if you were to step outside now, like you couldn't even tell anything was in the trunk. But inside, we're cruising. He had an older Impala, like I think it was like maybe a 78, 79 Impala. But yeah, it's just comical to think back on where you start from, and then to where you're at now. Because did you think that you were going to be in the industry this long?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I thought surely 4 years ago was going to be, I needed to go find something else to do. But then high res showed up, right? We'll get into that later.
Well, in your early years, though, like when you started it, because it was the same for me. Like, coming out of the military, and I thought I was going to do something totally different. And then finding this, and I was like, you know what? It is cool. It is fun. There's a lot of headaches. There's a lot of hassles. There's a lot of, and it's probably the same with any job that, but because I'm sure even the guys at McDonald's, right? They have their stresses. I thought maybe, 5-6 years tops, and then I'd go into something else. But it really is hard to walk away. At least for me, it's been hard to walk away. What did you think you would do? Like when you started this, how long did you think you were going to be doing this until?
I didn't have no plans.
No plans.
No plans. Like, I didn't know what it was going to come of it. I wasn't like the $1 million boy, but for the very first, like probably good 5 years, like, all right, when I started, it wasn't long after that we got hit with the first, like the recession of the early 2000s, right? And
Yep.
I don't remember which one it was, but when I started, I was like, I'd get told, "Leon, I need $1,000 out of you today." And I would be like, "Okay, yeah, no problem. That's easy. Bring them on. Bring it on." And I was able to sell loud. Like this is an era where I know now narcotics were flowing in the 90s, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
And money, there was a shit ton of money. And I had customers just bringing me cars, throwing me the keys, and they said, "You know what it is?" And I thought at the time that selling top of the line brands like Rockford and Kicker and their high end stuff was going to get me to be the popularity I seeked from all these people. But I was able to build loud shit, and people wanted loud shit. I had no competition, and I could speak fluent Spanish, and so I was talking to all these people. I know now they were drug dealers. At the time, I had no clue how they were spending all that money in these new trucks, right? But I knew I was getting it, and the owners knew I was getting it.
Yeah,
and I was having a good time because you could think like, yeah, I thought I was a badass car stereo installer back then. I thought I knew more than everybody. That I was the top installer of that era, right? And then I found out later on, I got to go to CES and see the real boys in the installer challenge. And I got to see, like, I remember we were standing there, me and Phil, and we'd look at each other and we would go, where's the mess? How are they building all this and there's no mess?
The drug dealers, right? Because that was the same way here. And you're right. They didn't care what it was. Like, it could sound like shit. As long as the trunk was rattling and gorillas were beating up out the trunk, and I know I'm not the only one that's heard that. And it was one of those things, right? They'd come here. And like you said, you knew what it was. They wanted, here, it was, I either want 412s, 415s, and depending on the client, you already knew whether it was 12s or 15s. And it was almost like they didn't care, right? Just, here's my car. How long are you going to need it for? Give me 2-3 weeks with it. And then they come pick it up. That's 45, 5,000. And it's crazy to think about that now. Because back then, you're like throwing 412s in a car, 3 amplifiers, freaking weeks of work. And, they're charging 45 or 5. And nowadays, right? Nowadays, you're smarter. You're like, we can't touch your car for 45 or 5 and give you what you want. Because you're not going to be happy, right? Everything's... These newer vehicles are just so advanced, right? You can't just throw anything into it and expect it to work. No. Some people don't understand that.
I remember I had one customer. He came in and he spent like $3,000 or $4,000. To us, that was a big deal in a truck. I did it was all Rockford, high-end stuff, their most expensive stuff. Like, I didn't sell that guy anything cheap.
No Series 1.
No, right? No Series 1. Everything, punch. It was all the highest shit. And so he came, he picked it up. I remember he went to Mexico. He came back, he threw the keys at me, and he said, "You ripped me off." And I looked at him, and I'm like, "I sold you the best of everything. Mm-hmm. How did I rip you off? I gave you a deal on that shit, And he goes... I went to Mexico and they just basically what he said was everyone shit on me with fucking Pile and all that. And I'm not understanding because I'm not there with him, right? Yeah. And I'm like, there's no way. And so what I had found out later, right, because I had to go to Mexico myself, those people were smoking him because they were driving around with like home speakers in the bed. Oh, yeah. Right? And then this is where I learned about Pro Audio, right? So I had no idea about Pro Audio and at this era. I don't know how long Pro Audio had been, going on, but that's when I started to learn about bullet tweeters and loudspeakers. And there was a company named Oxygen, and they brought me on with Oxygen. They said, man, you could take this $100 speaker and you could put 100 watts to it and you could hear it a block away, clear as day. And so that was my introduction, that it was like, okay, so Mexicans don't want name brand. We want Pro Audio. This is kind of what, when I came to Lubbock, this is what allowed us to be able to rock the town is because I knew about Pro Audio. I knew how to be louder than everybody else. Yeah. And it wasn't going to be hard for us to take the market when we came out. But that was my experience trying to learn into it. Because again, if nobody knows, Dodge City, Wyatt Earp, center of the United States, lower left-hand corner, Garden City, it's the southwest fucking panhandle. It sucks. There's nothing there for miles. We are the biggest city and within miles. Because from Dodge City, you got to drive all the way to Hutch or Wichita before you hit another big city. Damn. You go the other direction, an hour is Garden, and then you got Liberal, and then there's nothing, right? So no internet during this time, no Pimp My Ride. This was us learning how to do it, trial and error, on other people's dime and just destroying shit. I remember the H2 Hummer when it first came out. I stayed up until 3 a.m. I delivered that car at 3 a.m. to the owner of Bad Habits Bar and Grill. It was a blonde lady, really cool lady. She bought that truck, wanted the remote start, and dude, I had no clue where to start, but I had it done by that night. I started in the morning.
And the weird thing with H2 Hummer is one of those ones with the relays.
Yeah,
right?
And, oh my God. The disassembly on it was just, you disassemble the whole thing. The center, just to take this off, Dude,
Right,
it sucked.
the
Nobody.
whole
there
console
was-
comes up just to get to that one bolt.
We still
that you
gotta
need.
do
It,
that.
it
And-
interlaces. It interlaces like
Yeah.
like this, right?
know what the
and
hell
so
they
you
were
can't
thinking.
take the knee bolster off without removing the radio bezel, and I didn't. I loosened it and pried that motherfucker loose,
Well, I've
right?
done it before. Yeah, I mean, so it's like, and you get to that point where you know these cars so well now because they were so popular. Then you're like, I can just do this, and it's funny because sometimes you'll see a younger installer and they got the whole damn thing torn apart. Like you literally could have just fucking did this. But we're about finished up with this episode. Just finishing up right there. So, like I said, this is going to probably be a 4-part saga. Well, we're still touching the bases with Leon here, whatever. But as it is with every episode, we're going to tell an asinine story, just something ridiculous that has happened. And this is going to be one that he was part of. Laws was part of, and because I think everybody had different perspectives and views on it. And this is when we were in Dallas. We're in Knowledge Fest. And we're driving on, the loop or whatever of Dallas. And hopefully we can get Steve on one day, right? He's already told me no. But once you get him on, you're going to understand fully of why this happens. Laz and myself were in the back seat, and it's a Lincoln Navigator, brand new Lincoln Navigator. Leon and Steve were in the front seat, and we're driving. And I don't know. We just left a comedy show, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And we're going, and they get into an argument. And
You're talking about how we're restructuring.
restructuring. And, one of them is usually trying to get us. One of us is usually trying to get us in the right spot, and the other one's usually like, I don't understand. So either way, they're going, and I remember just sitting there, I'm looking at my phone, not paying attention or whatever. And I hear Laws like, stop. And then the overpass was not complete. And all they had was like this little beady freaking yellow rope around it. And I don't know how close you were because I just remember from
We
the
were
back seat.
touching it. We were touching
So
it.
that's what I was going to ask. Like from your view,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
So-
the exit. So the GPS took us on that exit, and,
okay.
and the exit was not blocked off at all in Dallas. And yeah, we were not going slow. We were going fast. And yeah, when we got out, the bumper was touching the little string. He said, and there was no bridge. We would have.
Went
We
straight
would've fell
down,
straight down.
nosedive.
It would have been over.
Yeah. And, the
Yeah.
crazy thing
We were
is,
all drinking too.
yeah, we'd all been drinking a little bit, and I remember sitting there
The
like
driver, right?
I was ready to put my freaking knees up, like my legs up into his seat, and later, Laws and I talked about. I was like, "Can you imagine if we would have went over?" I was like, "I think we would have survived. Them two wouldn't have. We would have had to been like." One of you's got to call Jen. One of us got to call Jen. One's got to call Natalie. Like, that was that. I mean, because they were in the front. It would have just went straight down. But so that is it for today's 12-volt buzz. Leon, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
We will see you probably next week or in a couple of weeks, so we can continue going on. Because like I said, there's a lot to cover. He's been doing this a long time, so. If you want to know all the ins and outs, I can give you all the ins and outs of install. He can give you all the ins and outs of coming through as an installer into owner. So yeah, we will see you next time.
Come on!